Will you please read the section, Animal Care and Control?
Division of Animal Care and Control on page 356, a revised green sheet, Edward R. Jameson, Chief Animal Control Officer. Salary and wages on page 357. 2014 unaudited, $767,046. 2015 budget, $807,107. Total expenditures on page 358. 2014 unaudited, $1,454,979. 2015 budget, $1,506,958. Number of employees on page 359. Number of employees, December 2014, 18. Number of employees budgeted for 2015, 20.
Thank you, Mr. James. Good morning, Chief James, or good afternoon, Chief James. It's been a long day.
Yes, it is.
And former Chief John Baird, Chief Emeritus. Director, any opening remarks?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, council members, first, this is Chief Jameson's first budget hearing. So
is that code for all of us to treat him nice?
It is, sir. He's done a very nice job over the course. But pertaining to his budget, there's really no significant deviations other than an increase in the costs incurred as the result of hiring the animal adoption volunteer coordinator, who is responsible for looking for the favorable outcome for the animals that enter the city kennel, as well as the addition of contracted inside veterinarian assistance. One thing that was neat, and the chief brought to my attention, he changed the logo. You know, at one point it said Cleveland Police, and he had animal control on top, and now it's animal control and care, and I thought that was a great recommendation. His current budget will support 16 full-time and 4 part-time employees in the Division of Animal Care and Control, as compared to 15 full-time and 3 part-time on the payroll during ending 12/31/14. And with that said, the Chief Jameson is going to have a few comments. He'll introduce his staff.
Great.
And then we'll be open to any questions or concerns.
Well, if the Director of TV 20 can hear me, I'd like them to zoom in on Chief Jameson so we can get him. But I appreciate your acknowledgement of the change that occurred because before it was. Do you have the old logo on you, John?
I have it on my coat.
You do? Can you bring it? Show it. I think it just speaks to the level of care that not only Chief Jameson has, but former Chief John Baird. That was the old logo.
If you look at it, it said Animal Control, and it looked like a police logo.
Right.
And
the new logo, why don't you show it off, Chief? Animal Care and Control. And I think that's really where we want to get this division to, where we're thinking about caring animals and controlling populations. So, Chief, welcome. You've made an impact already. Any opening remarks?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Council. As we spoke about, we did change the logo, and actually just started having our vehicles the logos being put on the vehicles switched out too, so that's a very good thing. The number of calls for service increased from 13,186 in 2013 to 13,644 in 2014, while the number of animals impounded decreased from 4,411 in 2013 to 4,145 in 2014. A staff plan in partnership with the Cuyahoga County Animal Shelter, the Cleveland Animal Protective League, as well as the many volunteers are working very hard and are continuing to do amazing jobs placing unclaimed and neglected animals that enter the kennel in the favorable situations outside of the city kennel. Even though 266 less animals entered the kennel in 2014, the number of animals adopted, returned to owners, or transferred to a partner rescue or shelter increased by a total of 38 to 3,249.
Say that number again.
The number that's totally transferred out was 3,249. left the facility, our facility.
Excellent.
And that comes to a 79.5% of all impounded dogs were adopted, returned to their owner, or replaced with another rescue or shelter organization, compared to 73% in 2014. So that continues to rise. The number of reported animal bites decreased to 679. And that's down from 729 in 2013. And the number of microchips that were implanted in animals increased from 1,624 in 2013 to 1,697 in 2014. And we will continue our service of nuisance wildlife traps to the citizens, and we'll continue the same services we did in previous years.
Great. And Chief, I'd like maybe if you could follow up and send us those statistics. I appreciate I shared the statistics with our colleagues around the save rate, nearly 80%. That's pretty remarkable considering the conditions you're dealing with down at that kennel and the old antiquated operations there. But you're always doing more with less, and so we appreciate it. I have just a couple questions. There is a little spike you'll see under salaries and wages on a 357 for part-time permanent, and that is for a part-time, what's that? You have a new part-time employee on board, or?
We have 2 part-time animal control officers and 2 part-time vet techs.
Okay, good. And one of them sits next to you, right?
Correct. Much more than a part-time animal control officer.
That's right.
The slot he's in.
And then further down on that page under contractual service, under the professional service line item, I see in 2013 we spent about $210, then it was last year $191, and this year budgeted $181. What types of activities would fall under that line item?
That line item covers things that are outside contracted spay and neuter, nuisance wildlife trapping contract with an outside vendor, our TNR program, our cremation services, and our contracted veterinarian.
Well, I know if Councilwoman Brady was here, she'd be very happy with our nuisance ordinance and the trapping of animals. Chief, I was aware that we received a grant at one point when we went in with the APL to do trap, neuter, and return. What's the status of that grant? How much money is left in that grant, and where are we at?
To my knowledge, and I may defer to John on that, but I do not believe any more of that grant is available, but we are continuing our trap, neuter, release program.
Mr. Beard?
Mr. Chairman,
use the mic.
Mr. Chairman, we didn't receive a grant for the trap, neuter, release. The city actually was paying in previously $50,000 a year to pay for those feral cats to be spayed, neutered, and released. The grants that we received from the ASPCA were for us to hold some ID events called Canine Wellness Days, where we can provide some vaccinations and microchipping. And we also received funding to vaccinate all our dogs at the kennel each year. So that funding is no longer coming to us.
And how much was that dollar value of that grant?
Last year that we were in the partnership, we received about $35,000.
$35,000, so we no longer have it. I know Councilman Johnson is a big fan of canine wellness. He's held a couple in his ward. I know Councilman Cummins has had. And you've been strategic, because all of us would love to have them, but you've really done those events in the areas where they're the most at large, running animals, as well as just people who have a lot of need, and they've been hugely successful. I've gone to a couple of them, so kudos to you. On page 358, under revenue, I see that you're budgeting roughly $50,000. What would be typical activity for those charges of service?
Chairman, the revenue are the fees that come from the adoption fees, our return to owner fees, our daily impound fees are all things that would be under revenue.
Right. And Chief, as I shared with you on many occasions at the committee table and outside, it's my hope, Director McGrath, and I've shared this with you many times as well, that I'm hopeful that we can align the operations of this particular division when we open the new facility. And it's going to require, I think, some hard decisions that the Department of Public Safety and the Department of Finance is going to have to do in terms of budget allocations. Because when we move into this new facility, in probably realistically sometime in early 2017, if we begin construction, potentially the fourth quarter of this year, maybe the first quarter of next year, 12 to 16 month construction cycle. It's probably going to be somewhere in 17. We need to align our operations, our personnel, the type of activity we do in 2017. So again, I just throwing it out there, maybe a little shot over the bow to say we need to start thinking about how we allocate resources to this particular division, so when the new one opens up, we can staff it. Right now it's staffed, and the guys and the women who work there do an amazing job, but it's kind of bare bones. So any just thoughts, Director, about how we ramp up to the grand opening of the new facility operationally and how we'll be there? Director McGrath, start with you and then go to the director checkbook.
Well, Mr. Chairman and council members, as you know, we just had a meeting a week or so ago, maybe a week and a half ago, and there is a committee together that is going to present the future floor plan for the new kennels, and not just the inside but the outside of the facility. It'll all be one presentation or one movement there. And there's also a committee together at some point in the very near future. They'll make recommendations as far as the vet, right? How we have a vet there. So we're in the process of moving forward with this. And then again, at some time, we'll have to cross the bridge and go over to the finance world to see if, in fact, how we're going to finance any additional costs over what's been budgeted.
Great. And Director Dumas, any comment or response?
No, Mr. Chair, I've not been part of the conversations as to how it may be staffed. Quite naturally, we know anytime we open a new building,
right,
we're going to need additional staffing, but that's something that we will have to, figure out.
Okay, great. Maybe I would welcome the opportunity, particularly after this facility is well designed and under construction, to have Director McGrath convene a meeting with folks from finance, your office, myself, as well as animal care and control, and talk about operational needs.
And Mr. Chairman, the goal is not to build a building, to build a building.
Right.
We want to build something that'll be institutionalized for the next 20, 25 years. So we have to be a little proactive in what we're recommending, so we have the capacity to improve and move forward.
Yes, sir. And, again, back to the line item on 358 under revenue, I mean, we've budgeted $55,000. You think safely you can bring in that revenue? I mean, a lot of it's predicated and tied to the more dogs that leave the kennel, the more revenue we can generate. How confident are you we can attain that revenue?
Mr. Chairman, I'm extremely confident about it. We ran the numbers yesterday, and we brought in about 40% more right now in 2015 than we did by this time in 2014. So we think that by some of the policies that we're putting in place and that we're actually really just being staffed properly with here and really sticking to, we're going to be able to bring in that revenue and hold with that and community outreach to actually bring that in.
Okay.
What?
Well, I know we lost a $35,000 grant. And when we we have to privately contract out because there's some animals, unfortunately, we have to cremate. So I think there's going to be something here that we're going to have to look at in terms of capacity and need. Questions from council members for this particular division? Councilman Johnson.
Can you restate again, Mr. Chairman? Can you restate about you no longer have the grant that dealt with wellness, the wellness initiative? Does that mean that the city is not going to be involved in any of wellness days anymore?
Mr. Chairman and Councilman, PetFix, the organization that also assisted in those last couple canine wellness days, and the Friends of the Cleveland Kennel have received or obtained a grant to hold at least 2 more for next year. And we're going to certainly be there, and we're trying to see if we can provide microchips if possible.
So let me see if I can answer the councilman's question. That was a modest and I think a very conservative response from the former chief there. We're not nearly going to be able to do the capacity we did last year, and I would hope, whether it would be through some advocacy on the safety director's part or through a budget reconciliation, we only have one operation that does this type of work, and this is it. And so they're not going to be able to do it to the capacity we did last year, Councilman.
All right. What do you, Mr. Chairman, when it comes to those who are responding to requests for dogs on the loose, whatever, how many, tell me under this budget, how many personnel are available to hit the streets to deal with barking dogs and deal with other issues?
Animal control officers, through the chairman, through the councilman, we have 10 animal control officers out on the street. Typically, Monday through Friday, we have 5 on the first shift. We have 2 on the second shift and 1 on the third shift, and I have incorporated in a swing shift there so that number of 5 during the day, 1 starts at 11 o'clock, so that helps me to cover, half of first shift as well as half of second shift, and that's been really good. Covers with call-offs, things of that nature that we're still covered, and we don't have one person trying to cover the whole city.
So, Mr. Chairman, I know you're connected to this, and I support the animal adoption. Is this a volunteer or paid? It says volunteer coordinator. Yeah, then I see a salary listed. Could you explain that to me?
It's through the chairman to the councilman. That is a paid position. I believe that position was created about 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And we just hired Miss Cynthia Bretta. She was the Cuyahoga County's volunteer coordinator. She is now the adoption and volunteer coordinator for our
I see.
Our
That's
division.
the title. I get
correct. It's a paid position. And it's on adoptions as well as with the.
And if I could just on that, Chief, I mean, there's just an incredible amount of volunteers who are going into the kennel. Now we have a dedicated city staff employee who's accountable to the chief, who can run under his leadership, who can achieve some of the things. And just some of the new things I just saw on social media. You have a new Facebook page called City Dogs, and some really good stories on there. But that is kind of the work of Miss Braddock, correct?
Mr. Chairman, that is correct. Her whole job is to work on getting dogs out. Where everybody else is pretty much animal control. When you have phases of getting dogs out, her 100% job is focused on the animals while they're in our care and focus on getting them out.
You were budgeted, Mr. Chairman, for 11 animal control officers, and you had an opening. Is there a reason why you didn't fill that 11th spot that was you were budgeted for?
Mr. Chairman, they are all filled. We hired a part-time animal control officer. Officer Davis just started about a little over a month ago, so we are up to full capacity.
Full capacity as what? Animal control?
Correct.
Officer?
Animal control officers, yes.
So you have 11 now?
Counting myself, it's 11.
But you're not, I'm not counting you.
I'm sorry.
This line item deals with animal control officer. I'm assuming you're animal control officer chief.
Correct. I stand corrected, Chairman, through to the council. We
So,
have...
I understand. You're fine. You're still in the honeymoon period right now. A few of them are way out of the honeymoon period, but you're still in it. All right, so
full-time, it is 10, if I'm not mistaken. We have 2 part-time and myself.
So the budget, last year's budget, we budgeted for 11. Did you at any point last year have 11 animal control officers?
Mr. Through the chairman, through to councilman, one of those was supposed to be the coordinator position, is my understanding of how that was listed last year.
Yeah, what happened on that point is 2 years ago, I guess, council made a push that we would have a full-time coordinator. Mayor Jackson was gracious enough to see the value of that, so he approved that. It just took some while for it to catch up. That's why it shows that one position was vacant, but that person has since been hired just several weeks ago or a month ago, and now it's fully staffed.
So no money was added. Well, money was shifted. So you took somebody off the streets. And instead of adding the position that has value, which I totally support, we removed a budgeted position that actually was the one that hits the streets. Right? We didn't add money with the new position. I mean, Mr. Chairman, I'm assuming the mayor signed off, but he did not sign off on the additional dollars for this division. They shifted dollars, correct?
I think the decision was made last year to approve this position. I assume that those resources were allocated during the fourth quarter budget reconciliation period. And Ms. Bretta was recently hired when, January?
29 days, she has a 30-day review.
January 29th.
So last year this time, Mr. Chairman, last year this time, we voted on 11 people holding the position of animal control officer, and somewhere along the lines, and by the fourth quarter, he's saying that there was an agreement that we would do an adoption coordinator.
So I got the point of his line of question is, so if you look on the line under protective services, there was a line item budgeted for 11 animal control officers. We've hired the volunteer coordinator, which keeps the numbers the same, but it's one less animal control officer. Councilman Johnson.
So that's I'm raising that question. At what point? So there was never an 11th. You said the council voted on this or agreed on this?
I want Mr. Beard to kind of
explain to me how I lost an extra body in my neighborhood.
Yeah,
potentially, not just mine, but in the city.
Mr. Chairman, the councilman, what happened is that we didn't have a dedicated title for that position of volunteer coordinator and adoption coordinator. So what happened, since there wasn't we set that new job description up and title. So there had to be a place that they put the actual person, so they just happened to put it in that line item.
So when you, Mr. Chairman, in 2013, do you remember how many animal control officers we had?
It's 18. That's 2015. So just what we have now.
We had the same number we have now.
So it's always been 10 for the last 3 years. 2 years, 3 years. It's only been 10.
That's correct. That number's never been 11, not since the 90s, if I'm not mistaken.
So let me ask the $1 million question. Is 5 per shift sufficient enough to deal with these calls, Mr. Chairman?
Chairman, through to the councilman, yes, that is sufficient.
And you come to that conclusion how that every call you answer?
Through the chairman to the councilman, yes, we respond to every call. We leave a notice on every call, even if there was no cause when we received it. We leave a notice.
So you got 5 people for the entire city of Cleveland per shift?
For clarification, that is on the first shift. There are 5 people. It goes to 2.5 on the second shift and then 1 on the third shift.
Remind me what second shift is?
11. I'm sorry, I stand corrected. 3 p.m. to 11 p.m.
We'll agree or disagree whether we are dealing with the problem out there. And that is not really a statement about you, it's about your budget and about what you're asked to do, from barking dogs to stray dogs, not to mention the other animals. Tell me about your trappings, Chairman. Your budget that deals with allowing for citizens to get a trap. Where's that at, the line item?
That is in the contracted services, and that's also in conjunction, my officers do that as well, in conjunction with
the actual equipment. How many traps?
Typically have about 100 out there. In the heat, we don't have very many out at all right now with the cold weather. But
so you're going to have 100 for the city of Cleveland?
That's correct.
So we're not increasing that?
In all likelihood, we'll probably not be increasing that.
Well, the challenge there becomes kind of what was budgeted in that particular line item, because
it's hard to tell.
To do it, Councilman, effectively the way we did it this past year, that's a $40,000 line item in of itself.
That doesn't sound like a lot of money to me. I know it sounds. You know, I'm a big fan of this department. The division here, I should say, but I'm also, it's a division that I think is an example where it's under budgeted based on a need. I anticipate this year to continue to get my calls about raccoons and possums skunks and stray dogs, not to mention cats. And there always comes a point where there's a waiting list for traps, a long waiting list for traps. And usually when you have the experience of long waiting lists, the way to deal with the inability to deal with capacity, that's a capacity question, is to buy more traps to deal with more folk. And I don't understand why we won't understand that every year we basically hit a wall when it comes to these traps. And I get the calls like, they don't have any more, what can I do, blah, blah, blah. So I just want to acknowledge that I don't think we're meeting the capacity needs of our constituents when it comes to a real concern about these animals. And for me, it's serious because of the health care risk, the health risks, the potential bites issues, not to mention the damage done by raccoons in light of these abandoned houses. The equivalent problem of vacant houses and raccoons, there is a connection. And I just don't think we have responded to that reality by providing more resources. And I know that this administration is not going to add any more money to this budget or shift any money over here, but I am red flagging again this need for us to deal with the traps. You guys also do poison. Do you do that, or that's the health department? That's not you.
That is not us. That's
You're strictly the traps.
Correct.
All right, finally, feral cat issues. Tell me what you guys, remind me again what you do for the cat.
So talk about the initiative that was done in 2014 with the APL and what we're doing moving forward.
That's what I want.
Mr. Chairman, that is the Trap Neuter Release Program, and we put money into the residents can take a trap cat to the Cleveland Animal Protective League. The resident pays $10 and the city pays $20. I think it's around $21 and some change now. So is it $31-ish is just the direct cost for the APL, and so we put funds into that program with the APL.
But the thing that's remarkable about this program, Councilman, and I'm glad you brought this point up, is if you look back like the last 15 years, last year was the first time that the feral cat population was stabilized, that it didn't increase. Every year it kept increasing. And if we don't continue to support this, this is something that I've personally met with Mayor Jackson, met with former Safety Director Flask about, I've spoken to current Director McGrath about as well, that it's my hope when we open up that new facility, Director Dumas, that we can have a program that we can almost bring citywide. Because if we don't control the feral cat population, there's a lot of disease that can happen from it, and a lot of other related issues. We had a brilliant person, a professor from UC Santa Barbara, or UC Davis, who came, and we had a full hearing this past summer and made a very compelling reason why municipalities are turning this way. I know the city of Pittsburgh has a citywide program. It costs them annually about $150,000 a year. But and that's a real dollar, but there are other dollars that they're saving their city by implementing this program. So I just wanted to underscore the important point that Councilman Johnson's making. Councilman.
That's all I need. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just real briefly on the trapping, one of the things we are going to try our tactics a little bit different this year. We're going to try to not lean as much on the vendor, and we are going to try to do more ourselves. So that is, we're sending out 5 animal control officers out into each district each morning. So they will go out with more specific trapping responsibilities right off the bat first thing in the morning. It's an ebb and flow of the time of year. Right now, I don't even want traps out now. It's too cold for them, and so we're just collecting traps this time of year, and then you hit May, June, July, and all of a sudden you have this huge spike. So it's we could buy traps till we're blue in the face. It's a matter of the trap having enough trappers to physically handle them once you catch them. And hopefully we'll see how this works, and by this time next year I can tell you the results of trying to have us be even a little more hands-on ourselves.
Well, just on, Director Dumas and Director Flask, I have a concern that, Director McGrath, I'm sorry, Ezzo, yeah, right. I got him because he's calling Sergeant Ezzo a different name.
Tired.
Yeah, we are tired. But we're within the professional service contract. We're already, we spent $40,000 last year to do the nuisance wildlife trapping. We don't have the grant to do the health and wellness, which is $35,000. We're going to blow through that budget really quick, and I think that budget is, $50,000 to $60,000 under budgeted, and that's something that I like the finance department to work with public safety to think about how we can replenish those sources that are gone. That's something that we need to look at. Director?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for Animal Care and Control? Chief Jameson, thank you for coming. Chief Emeritus, thank you for joining us as well.
Thank you. Thanks.
Mr. James, you want to...
Division of Correction on page 360.